Hello and welcome back to Python Fundamentals. In this video, I'll explain about user-defined functions in Python. As you all know, function is block of organized reusable code. So if you want a group of statements that performs this task to be repeated in a program, you can write those group of statements as a function. So all user-defined function must begin with a keyword called def followed by name. So I'll take fn as a name of the function and parenthesis followed by colon. And whatever statements that are to be repeated in the function or that are to be executed inside the function, you must write. Now, I want to write a function which prints the value of x. So, inside the function, you have to give and put parameters or arguments. So, I'll take x. Now, I'll write the statement print the value of x is comma x. So I have written only a single statement. So this is a general way of writing user-defined function. So it must consist of def keyword, then any name you can give to the function, and then parenthesis. Within the parenthesis, you have to give the input parameters or arguments, and then a colon. And then inside the function, you have to write the statements which you want to execute. So here I am writing, I want to print the value of x. So I have given this print statement. Now, this is the simple function. Now, we have to call the function, right? So how to call the function? Always a function should be called by its name. So come out of the function. You just have to come out of the function and then now call the function by its name. What is the name of the function? Fn. So call fn and then parenthesis. Because here we have one argument that is x, we have to give the value of x and we are calling the function. So I'll give 2. So let us try to execute. So you can see the print statement of this function is executed with replacing the x with the value of 2. The value of x is what? 2. So 2 is passed to the x. So this is a simple user-defined function. So let us try to write another function which adds 2 numbers. So the first one is a keyword def, then function name I'll take it as add, and then I'll pass the input parameters. I'll take 2 numbers x and y, and then colon, and then inside the function we'll write the program to add the 2 numbers. So x is equal to x plus y, then we'll print the value of c, that is the sum. You can use a string, the sum of x and y is, you can write like this, comma, then print the value of c. So this is the function, right? We have executed, there are no errors. Now we can call the function by using its name. So add is the name of the function. And inside the function, there are 2 arguments called x and y. So you have to pass 2 arguments. So how many? So any function expects the arguments. We can call the function by the number of arguments that are defined inside the function. Because here we have 2 arguments. Here also you have to give 2 arguments, 1, 2. So this function will add the 2 numbers, 1 and 2, and give the result. So 1 plus 2 is 3. So the sum of x and y is 3. So this is how we can call the function. Suppose if I try to give only one argument, even though I have initialized I have declared two arguments inside the function, then it will show an error. So always the number of arguments must be, when we are calling the function, the number of arguments must be equal to number of arguments declared inside the function. So that is an important point in the user-defined functions. Suppose if we forgot to give the second argument, instead of for this, we have another property called default arguments. That means if even though if we forget to give the value, we can declare a default value in the function itself when we are defining the function. Such types of arguments are called default arguments. So because here the value of y is not declared, if you declare a default value to y in the function itself, then it will assume the default value even if the value is not provided. So let us try to write the same program by using default arguments. So I'll write y as 2. Now I'll execute the program. So by default, the value of y should be equal to 2. So let us see and check the program. Now I'll pass two values and see what happens to the program. Then I'll take only one value and then we'll see what happens to the program. So now again I'll give add 1 comma 2 or otherwise I'll give 1 comma 3 because default value I already have taken as 2. So it will be a little bit confusing. So add 1 comma 3. See here, even though the value of y is initialized as 2, this is considered as a default value. This value will be considered if we forget to give the value of y when we are calling the function. Otherwise, when we pass the values, when we are calling the function, only those values will be considered. So add 1 comma 3. So the sum of x and y is 4. Now I'll give only the x value and then I'll try to execute the function. Right? See, now here, because the value of x is initialized, even though the y is not asked, what it has taken, it has considered y is equal to 2 as a default value and added 2 to 4. So the sum of x and y is 6. So this is called default arguments. So you can write it as default arguments. So this is another important point to be remembered or noted in the user-defined functions. So that is the other type of arguments. So we can give the arguments itself inside the function and we can call the function by the same number of arguments by passing the same number of arguments. And if we forget, then we can take a default value and then we can give the other input inside. We can call the function by using only one input. So that is called the default arguments. I hope you understood. So the next thing is if you want to pass more than one argument, here we have used only two arguments. In the first function, I have taken one value, and in the second function, I have considered two values of x and y. Now I want to take multiple. I don't know how many values to take. Then we can go for multiple arguments by using star. Okay, let us asterisk. So we'll try to define a function with multiple arguments where asterisk placed before variable name holds the values of all non-keyword variable arguments. That is a number of arguments that will be passed using asterisk before the parameter name. If you don't know how many number of parameters we are going to pass, that is called multiple arguments. So let us see what is called how to pass multiple arguments. Now I'll write in the program define def keyword multiply star asterisk, right? Right. I'll use some name. Suppose I'll write and name. Okay. So 10 colon. Now I am taking the product. Suppose I'll initialize product with the 1, C is equal to 1. Now, so for all the input for I in name, I don't know how many number of arguments I'm going to give. So for I in name, product, or you can write C is equal to C star multiply with I, right? That is the product. Now we can print I. So try to print I. Print. So what is the value we want to print? We are going to print the value of C, right? Into C. So execute. Now call the function multiply. Now I can give any number of arguments because I have declared this variable with asterisk. So I can give 2, 3 number of arguments I can pass. I'll pass 1 into 2 into 3. So it has to multiply 1, 2, and 3. So let us see what is the output. So 3, 2, 6, 6, 1, 6. I take 4 arguments, multiply 4, 3, 2, 1. Then see, what is that 12? 12 2s are 24, 24 into 1, 1. So this is the other way of passing the arguments, multiple arguments in the user-defined functions. So arguments basically can be specified inside the function and call the function by equal number of arguments. How many number of arguments we have defined in the function? Call the function with the same number of arguments. Suppose if you have declared only one argument, call the function with the one argument. Similarly, here I have used 2 arguments and I call the function with 2 arguments. So that is one way of inputting the parameters or giving the arguments to the function. The second way is called default arguments. And if you forget to give the equal number of arguments that are declared while you're calling the function, then we can declare one of the argument as a default argument. We can by default. So if you forget to define it in the calling function, it will take the default value. So that is called default arguments. So that is here, I have given an example. I have given X and Y. Even though we declare Y is equal to 2 as a default, but when we are calling the function and declare Y with another value, it will consider only the new value. But if you forget, then by default, it will take the value of Y is equal to 2. So that is called default arguments. The third category is called multiple arguments. We can pass any number of arguments to the function. And if you don't know how many number of arguments we are going to pass, then you put asterisk and then give some name inside the parenthesis. And then this is the multiplication function. So I want to find the product of number of arguments. So I have taken a value of X is equal to 1. So for I in names, how many number of arguments are there? For each value, we have to find product. C is equal to C into I. So if you are passing 3 values, for all the 3 values, for 3 in name, so it will find the product of C into I. Initially C is 1, so 1 into I. So the first time 1, so when we are passing 1, 2 and 3, first it will find, because C is 1 by default we have given, 1 into I is equal to 1, 1 into 1, and then again 1 into 1 is 1, again it will take I as 2, so 2 into 1, next I is taken as 3, so 2 into 3 is 6. So that is called multiple arguments and the Python. And then we can have more number of, we can write any number of functions not only a single function, we can write number of functions in Python. So let us see, I'll give an example, and then we can call function with another function. Let us see that. Define function one. Function one is, I can give the value x is equal to 20 inside the function, and then print x. Okay. Now I'll define another function, multiple functions, function 2, and then I'll write colon. I'll take now x is equal to 30, and then print x, and I can also call the function 1 inside this function 2. So function 1. So I'm calling this function 1, right, inside function 2. So let us execute this. Now, if you call function 2, function 2 as well as function 1 also must be executed. See here. So what is function 2? Function 2 first statement is x is equal to 30, print x. So that has been printed, right? 30 has printed. And inside function 2, we have called function 1. Function 1 is x is equal to 20, print x. So those statements are also being called. So just by using the function name inside the function, we can call this entire user-defined function inside function 2, and by using function 2, we can print all the statements together. So that is another point to be remembered when we are using user-defined function. So let us try to write one more function. Two different functions are called by using a single function. I'll take same example, and then instead of x here, I'll put y, and print x value is x value is, and then here I'll write y value is comma x comma y. So by using only this function 2, I can execute all the statements of function 1 as well as function 2, right? So this function 2, see, first the statement will be executed of function 2 y when the value of y value is 30. Right? Now, after that, we have called this function. So now x is equal to 30, print. So the value of x will be printed. So this is one more point to be remembered. And then in functions, user-defined functions, we have an important point called variables. So the next thing in functions, we have to remember called variables. Variables can be local, that is inside, they are accessed only by using that function, and some can be global variables. So when we declare variables outside the function, they can be accessed throughout the program by all the functions. But when we use the variables as local variables and declare inside the function, they can be accessed only inside that particular function. So I'll give examples for both global and local variables. So this is obviously this function is the local variables. We can define this as a local variable. The same function, they are only for the inside the function, right? They are meant for only the function. So we can write two different functions, and instead of defining, I'll take. Now, here I can take x value as 30, right? And then I can call function 1 also. So now see here, for the same x, we have given two values. Here the value of x is 20 for f1, and here for the function fn2, the value of x is 30. So these are called local values. So for when you call this function, this value will be considered. When you call this function, this value will be considered. So we have already seen this example. So when we try to call this, we get two values of x, right? So here we are using x, and we try to print divider, right? So if I execute again, so see here, that means it is a local value. So for function 1, the value of x is 20, and for function 2, the value of x is 30. So such type of variables are called local variables. They must be written inside the function. And when we call that function, the values will be printed, right? So that is called local variables. Now, if we want one variable to be a global variable, then let us see what happens when we call a global variable. Suppose I try to write x is equal to 20, y is equal to 30, and write a function define function 1, okay, right? I don't need to mention the arguments inside the function because I have declared them as global variables. And then for function 1, I'll take c is equal to x plus y, print c, right? And then I'll add another function 2, and I'll use the same variables of x and y and find the difference between y and x, and then try to print the difference. Now, both the functions will consider the values of x and y as 20 and 30. So when we define them outside the function, they are called global variables, and they can be accessed by any function. So that is called global variables. Right? So let us try to call the functions and try to print them. Right? So execute. Right. First to call function 1. So see, when you have declared the x and y as global and outside the functions, so this function has considered the values of x is equal to 20 and y is equal to 30. Now call another function 2. It has to print the difference. Say 30 minus 20, 10. So such type of variables are global variables which can be accessed by the user by any function. But these variables are local variables, and they are meant only for that particular function. X is 20 for this function 1, and x is equal to 30 for this function 2. So those are called local variables. So we can have local and global variables. So till now we have seen different types of arguments, how to declare arguments within the function, and how to give multiple arguments in a user-defined function, and then how to use default arguments in the function. And then we have seen how to use local and global variables. And then there is another important thing which is called as return function. What is return function? What is return? Let us try to see what is called return. Instead of using print, I can use a keyword called return. I'll say return x. So return keyword returns the result to the caller and always must be used at the end of the function. And after return, you cannot write any statements. So this is called return. Let us see what return does if we call function 1. If we call the function 1, So see here, it returns the result of the column. What is the result of the column? It return X. We asked to return X, but what is X? X is equal to 20. So that 20 has been outputted. That is called, that is the return keyword. This is very, very important. Even if you try to write statements after return, they will not be, those statements will not be executed. So let us try to write a print statement outside uh, print hello. Let's see whether a print statement will be executed or not after return. Right. So call the function by its name. See here. So if after return, no statements must be written. No statements must be written, right? You should not write any statements after return keyword, right? That is so it must be used only at the end of the function. So you can write the same thing and use return X at the end, right? Then it will print the value or print that it also executes the print statement. Then execute, then call the function one. See here. So that is the purpose of return keyword. I think I hope you all understood what is an user-defined function. So what is an user-defined function? User-defined functions are those functions unlike built-in functions. We have built-in functions in Python like print, input, and etc. So these user-defined functions are a group of statements that performs a task, and these uh, user-defined functions, they are used when to avoid repetition in a program. Suppose if we are repeating the print the value of X number of times in the program, instead of writing print number of times, we can define it in a function and call that function whenever we need to print that value of X. So that is the purpose of function, user-defined function. So it is a block of organized reusable code, right? And how to write a function? You have to use a def keyword followed by the name of the function, any name you can give, and then parenthesis, and followed by next colon. And inside the parenthesis, you must give input parameters or arguments, the number of input parameters or arguments, whatever you want, how many number of arguments you want to pass, you can pass inside the function. And write the statements which you want to execute, and then you can call the function by its name and giving, and inside the parenthesis when you are calling, the number of arguments should be same as the number of arguments that are declared while you are writing the function. So that is the basic point to be remembered when using user-defined functions. And then you have the second point to be remembered, that if you can give default arguments, and in default arguments are used, suppose so whenever we use this default arguments, it assumes default value if the value is not present. So whenever you are calling the function, and if the value of y is missing, if you have declared a y with a default value, that value will be considered. That is the advantage of default arguments. And then we can have multiple arguments instead of 1, 2, or 3. We don't know how many number of input values we are going to give. Then we can give multiple arguments by using asterisk followed by the variable name. So whatever name you can want, you can give then you can pass number of values. So whenever calling this multiple function, the number of values that can be passed will be varied. So asterisk always tells to consider multiple arguments, that is the asterisk. And then variables can be local or global variables. Local variables are within the inside the function or written inside the function, and they are meant only for that particular function. So when we call function 1, then only the x value will be 2. When we are calling function 2, x value will be 30 because they are defined inside the function. That is, they are called local we declare the variables, we can use X and Y in different types of functions because they are global. That is the difference between local and global variables. And then we have one keyword called return in Python. What is called return? Return always returns the result to the caller and is always used at the end of the function. Instead of print, we can also use return. But once we use a return, no statements must be written after the written keyword, right? So that is the written keyword. So I hope you all understood the user-defined functions and how to pass the arguments, what are variables, what is a written keyword. Thank you.